r/ProRevenge. Steal a family heirloom, lose your running water. Story by Flying Donkey Dong 69. Enjoy! My mom and dad live on a farm with some of my extended family in the countryside of East Canada. Most family members grew up and left for the West, but those who stayed built their own houses around the farm and made a living either in town, or helping my granddad, and later, my dad. Those who stayed usually handed their houses down through their own families. One such house belonged to my great-aunt. Back in March, she passed away, and left her house to her son Kyle, and his wife, Paula. According to my mom, Kyle and Paula weren't the kind of people any hard-working, honest person would want to associate with. Kyle was arrested a few times when he was a teenager for multiple B&Es and petty theft charges, but because he was a minor, he only did community service. Paula was usually the reason Kyle committed those crimes, egging him on and inflating his ego. Even after all this, my great-aunt still defended Kyle, going as far as to begging my great-uncle to let him stay whenever he threatened to send Kyle away to the military, or just throw him out. Eventually, Kyle and Paula married and moved into a crappy duplex in town. Great-aunt outlived great-uncle, and when she passed, her will stated that her house and everything in it went to Kyle, who was so pumped to move in that he missed his own mother's funeral because he was busy cleaning out the house of anything he thought would net him a quick buck. The two moved in, and nothing really happened for a month. Then one day, Kyle came over while my dad was working on a tractor, and asked if he needed help. Dad was weary of Kyle, but gave in to the much-needed manpower. Kyle was a buffoon, and apparently did the exact opposite of what Dad asked of him, even if he was crystal clear on what he wanted Kyle to do. He ended up telling Kyle that he didn't need any more help in the nicest possible way, and that he was free to leave. While cleaning up the garage, Dad couldn't find 6 of the repair tools he was using, specifically, the tools he lent to Kyle to help with the tractor. These tools were ones that my grandpa had given Dad as a gift for when he took over the farm. They were near and dear to Dad, and they became even more so when Grandpa passed. Initially, Dad thought Kyle might have taken them back to his place by accident, forgetting they were in his pocket or something. Dad walked over and asked Kyle if he had his tools, explaining why they were so important. Kyle shrugged and said he didn't have them, so Dad went back to the garage to keep looking. Fast forward 2 weeks. Dad still hasn't found the tools, and it's taken a toll on his morale. As he sat in the house eating lunch, my grandma barged in a fit of rage and forcefully placed one of the missing tools on the table before my dad. Paula had invited Grandma over for tea and to ask about activities she could do in the area. Grandma wasn't even seated when she noticed one of Dad's missing tools was just sitting there on the kitchen table. When Paula wasn't looking, she snatched the tool and placed it in her purse, somehow controlling her anger until after the meeting. When she told this all to my dad, he turned furious. Not only did Kyle steal from him, he outright lied to his face. He marched right over to Kyle's and confronted him. He laid into Kyle, presenting the tool and Grandma's story to him, demanding any other tools Kyle might have stolen. In response, Kyle told Dad to leave his property, and slammed the door in his face. Dad walked back home, and considered calling the cops about all of it, but Grandma stopped him. She had a better idea. The water table around the area is very hit or miss. Great-uncle dug 3 separate times for a well, and each one eventually dried up after a few days. So Grandpa came to him with a deal: help pay off half of his well installation debt, and he'll run a pipe from the well to Great-uncle's house. He agreed, paid, and it was done. This meant that the water main for Great-uncle's, now Kyle's, house was on Dad's property. Cue the revenge. Dad went to the pump house where the water well was, and shut off the water main to Kyle's house. 2 hours later, there was a knock on his door. Kyle had come to ask Dad if his water was working because his wasn't. He led Kyle out to the pump house to inspect the well, and pointed out with great satisfaction that the water main was shut off, and it would remain that way until he got his tools back. When Kyle realized that Dad was serious, he just came out and told him the truth. He, in fact, didn't have the tools, because he had sold them to someone. Dad held back his anger and just repeated his previous statement: no tools, no water. He then gestured to the door, and escorted Kyle out of the pump house, padlocking the door behind him. Then came the shenanigans. Dad caught Kyle trying to get into the shed multiple times. At first, he tried finding another way in besides the padlocked door, but then he tried picking the lock, and even tried breaking it. But every time, my dad caught him in the act, and threatened him with the farm rifle. Kyle even called the cops at one point, claiming that Dad was constantly threatening him with the rifle for no reason. Thankfully, the cops listened to Dad's side of the story, and since his seemed more plausible, they didn't bother with doing anything. A whole month went by before Kyle came to the door with 3 of the 6 tools that were missing. Dad asked where the other 2 were. And Kyle had the audacity to act as if he was the victim in the situation, complaining that he spent so much money to get them back, how he and his wife have been washing things with bottled water, which was costing them a fortune, and he just wanted their water back. Dad retorted that he wanted his damn tools back, and that he wouldn't be in this situation if he didn't steal from him in the first place. Kyle just sulked back to his house. Dad never got his tools back, but Kyle never got his water back either. He and Paula eventually put the house up for sale and moved back to town. Dad only turned the water back on when the real estate agent asked him nicely. The new neighbors are much better, and don't have sticky fingers to boot. You are an absolute legend for making it to the end. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please hit that like button. And if you can't get enough, consider subscribing. See you around.